Welcome to our deep dive. We've got all sorts of resources here on Caregiver Burnout, self-care, and those empowering routines that everybody wants. Our mission is to extract those golden nuggets from all this info so you can use it.
That's right. Well, I think that it's important to acknowledge right up front that self-care for a caregiver isn't selfish. It's really the fuel you need to be a good caregiver.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So let's just dive right in. We're going to start by unpacking this elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Which is caregiver burnout.
Right.
And I was really struck by some of the numbers. In the caregiver burnout statistics, 42 million Americans are providing unpaid care to an adult over 50. That's a huge responsibility.
Right.
And what's even more alarming is that over 60% of those caregivers experience burnout symptoms.
Yeah, those numbers are huge. And one of the interesting things that the research also points to is that a lot of times with that 60%, it's not just feeling tired or emotionally exhausted. It's that there's kind of a sense of detachment from the person they're caring for. And that can lead to, feelings of guilt and inadequacy and just compound the burnout.
Yeah, that's such an important point. It's not just about feeling tired. It's really a much deeper emotional and psychological strain. And one of the sources, the pasted text, lists some signs of burnout that I think a lot of people can relate to. Feeling constantly overwhelmed, changes in your sleep patterns, withdrawing from friends and family. Have you noticed any of those things creeping in? Because it's easy to downplay them when you're in the thick of things, caregiving, but they're really important to pay attention to.
Recognizing those signs is so important. And, speaking of things that kind of sneak up on you, it also brings up hypervigilance and compassion fatigue, which are often less talked about, but very real for caregivers.
Can you explain those a little bit more? I think it would be helpful for our listeners to understand what those terms mean.
Absolutely. Hypervigilance is that feeling of being like, you're always on alert. Like you can never really relax, even when you have help, like your nervous system is just stuck in overdrive. Imagine you're constantly scanning the environment for threats, even when there aren't any.
Oh, wow, that sounds exhausting.
It is. And compassion fatigue is the emotional drain. That comes from constantly empathizing and caring for someone who's suffering. You give so much of yourself, you kind of hit a wall.
Yeah, that makes total sense. When you think about all of those challenges, I think it makes these small moments of respite even more important. I love the idea of micro-me moments. From our 5 quick ways to refuel guide in the Caregiver Empowerment Bundle, these are just those little pockets of time, 2 minutes to take a few deep breaths, a quiet cup of coffee while your loved one is resting. It's not a spa day, but it's about intentionally grabbing those moments to recharge.
And those little micro moments are so key for preventing that total depletion. It's like taking little sips of water throughout the day. To stay hydrated, you might not feel it right away, but those sips add up and make a difference.
Yeah. And they can really help shift your mindset, too. Another tip from the 5 quick ways to refuel that resonated with me was turning routine care tasks into rituals. Instead of just going through the motions, put on some music, listen to a podcast while you're helping with those daily tasks. It's a subtle shift, but it can make a big difference for both of you.
Yeah, it's about, finding those little wins wherever you can. And that's actually a nice segue, I think, into some of the longer-term strategies in the 5 easy routines to clear daily stress, which is also part of the bundle. These are really the foundations, I think, for well-being that lasts, even in the middle of caregiving.
Yeah, I love it. I'm excited to dig into these. Should we start with sleep? The guide emphasizes the importance of getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep. It's not just about feeling rested. It's about lowering cortisol, which is the stress hormone.
Yeah, elevated cortisol can have a huge impact on your mental and physical health. It's like having your emergency brake on all the time. Eventually something's going to give.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And I know for me, having a relaxing bedtime routine is key to getting a good night's sleep. What about you? What does your nighttime routine look like?
Well, I find a warm bath a good book, a real page turner, not a medical textbook. And calming music really helps me signal to my body that it's time to unwind.
Oh, yeah, that's lovely.
I love that.
It's those little things that can make a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked about sleep. What about movement? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, even just a brisk 20-minute walk can make a huge difference to your stress levels.
You don't have to hit the gym or anything, or train for a marathon. It's really just about finding activities that you enjoy. Maybe it's dancing or gardening or just taking a walk in nature. Right, it's just getting your body moving and releasing those endorphins. And speaking of things that can boost your mood, the next routine focuses on mindfulness, whether that's meditation or deep breathing or journaling. Finding ways to kind of calm that racing mind is so important for caregivers.
Oh, I love mindfulness practices. I think caregiving can be so demanding
Mm.
on your mental and emotional resources. Like your brain is constantly on high alert. Mindfulness helps create those pockets of stillness
Mm.
in the middle of the chaos.
Absolutely. It's about, training your mind to focus on the present moment rather than getting kind of swept away by worries and anxieties. And it's a skill, it takes practice,
It does.
just like anything else.
And then there's connection. We're human beings, we're social creatures. And having a supportive network is so important. But as you mentioned earlier, it's crucial to choose those confidants carefully
Yeah.
because not everybody is equipped to understand the nuances of caregiving.
Exactly. Sometimes seeking professional support from a therapist or joining a support group can be incredibly beneficial. It just offers that safe and non-judgmental space to
Yeah.
process your experiences and connect with others who really get it.
Yeah, that's a great point. I want to shift gears a bit
Yeah.
and touch on something that we haven't really talked about yet, which is maintaining your sense of self outside of your caregiving role. I think this ties in beautifully with the idea of realistic self-care expectations that we find in the pasted text.
Right. It's so easy to get caught up in thinking that self-care has to be this grand, elaborate thing, like a luxurious vacation. But for most caregivers, that's just not realistic.
Right. And that kind of thinking can set us up for disappointment. Encourages a shift in perspective to focus on those smaller, more achievable actions that we can weave into our daily routines.
It's about those little things that seem insignificant, but actually have a huge impact. A few minutes of reading, a walk around the block, even just savoring a cup of tea without rushing.
Right. And those micro-me moments that we talked about
Yeah.
absolutely count. It's about being intentional, about creating those pockets of peace and rejuvenation throughout the day.
Absolutely. And, one tool that can really help you visualize those pockets and kind of get a sense of where your energy is going is the energy check exercise, which is also included in the Caregiver Empowerment
Oh,
Bundle.
I love that exercise. Have you used it yourself?
Oh, absolutely. It's so simple, but so powerful. You basically create this diagram with arrows pointing outwards to represent the people or tasks that drain your energy, and then arrows pointing inward for the things that energize you.
So, for example, if you're spending hours each day providing physical care and emotional support, that would be an outward arrow, draining your energy. But if you're taking a few minutes to meditate each morning, that would be an inward arrow, refilling your energy reserves.
Exactly. And once you can see those patterns on paper, you can start to brainstorm ways to shift that balance. Maybe it's asking for help from family or friends. Maybe it's delegating tasks. Maybe it's carving out more time for those things that truly energize you.
And the bundle actually includes some really helpful worksheets and prompts
Mm-hmm.
to kind of guide you through that process. And, one thing that really stood out to me from the 5 Easy Routines guide was the section on nutrition and supplements. And it really highlighted how directly our diet impacts our ability to cope with stress.
Yeah, that's so important. When we're chronically stressed, our bodies are producing more cortisol, which can disrupt our sleep and affect our mood, and even weaken our immune system.
So eating a balanced diet, making sure we're getting those key nutrients, can actually be a form of stress management. And for those times when diet alone isn't enough, the guide suggests exploring supplements, with your doctor's guidance, of course.
Always consult with your doctor before starting any new supplements. But certain nutrients like B vitamins, magnesium, and vitamin D can be helpful in supporting our body's stress response and promoting a sense of calm.
We highly recommend checking out the Caregiver Empowerment Bundle at thecaregiverdoula.care. It's full of practical tools and strategies to help you thrive in your caregiving journey. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and keep up the amazing work you're doing.